Well, if you've been listening to this program for the last few years and have been listening to very much about nutrition, you realize that you've been hearing about a silent killer. It's a killer that's worse than alcohol, worse than nicotine, worse than drugs. It's called monosodium glutamate. And most people don't know that MSG is in thousands of processed food, often under hidden name, probably in your kitchen cabinets. And now some doctors say this flavor booster could be boosting your weight. This is going to be the first of a 4-part series, today, tomorrow, and then 2 next week, by medical reporter Galen Tethrow on the dangers of MSG.
MSG. You may think it's only an ingredient in Asian food, but you're wrong. It's everywhere. From restaurants to your grocery to your kids' school cafeterias, even your baby's formula. Monosodium glutamate is a flavor enhancer that's been big in the U.S. since the 50s. It's supposed to make your food taste better, but research shows MSG is making us fat.
It's very difficult to exercise off. It's very difficult to diet off. And these infant animals that become obese tend to become what we refer to as couch potatoes.
Dr. Russell Blaylock has studied these common flavor enhancers that many experts believe are hazardous to your health. He calls them excitotoxins, the taste that kills. An excitotoxin is a big word for any substance like MSG that overexcites cells to the point of damage, acting as a toxin, hence the term excitotoxin, a form of poison. The FDA considers MSG safe, but numerous scientists have found that glutamate in the diet can cause a range of problems in animals, including obesity.
These foods, particularly in a child, is certainly of the dose equal to what you're seeing in animals. Now, the thing that's peculiar about the child, they're 4 times more sensitive than an adult.
Pound for pound.
Pound for pound.
So babies in the womb and young children up to about age 3 are the most threatened. That means expectant mothers may need to be mindful of their diets. And when the babies are born, moms may want to watch out for formula. Nearly all formulas contain processed milk or soy protein. Because of the processing, these proteins are broken down into MSG and related excitotoxins.
The other curious thing about exposing animals to MSG early in life is they prefer sweet foods, foods with sugar in it, carbohydrate foods, and they stay away from the foods that are healthier.
And that can contribute to obesity throughout life and can make it almost impossible to lose weight. So is the public getting enough MSG in their food to trigger obesity? Estimates for MSG consumption vary widely, but almost everyone acknowledges significant and steady increases in the diet since 1960. And that may relate directly to government figures on excess pounds. Over the last 40 years, the government says adult obesity has jumped from 13% to 34%, and the number of overweight youth has quadrupled to almost 20%, with a steady rise for 40 years. Of course, that doesn't necessarily prove the MSG has caused the increased obesity. But Dr. John Olney, a pioneer in brain research, first found MSG caused obesity in lab animals in the 1960s. And Blaylock says the MSG theory makes much more sense than any other possible cause, such as lack of exercise. One of the frightening obesity effects of MSG is that it produces the harmful fat found deep in the abdomen.
And we know people that have a lot of visceral type fat have an extremely high incidence of heart attack and stroke and arteriosclerosis.
They're also more likely to suffer from insomnia, high blood pressure, type 2 diabetes, and high cholesterol. Blaylock says to reduce MSG intake, consumers will have to pick foods more carefully.
Because there's intense competition between the food companies for taste and for customers. And customers choose foods based on taste mostly. So if you can add a lot of this taste-enhancing MSG, you produce this effect.
With obesity continuing to rise, ignoring the MSG component could mean there's no end in sight for the ravages of excess pounds. Reporting from Jackson, Mississippi, I'm Galen Tethrow, CBN News.
Well, that's the first of a 4-part series. Ladies and gentlemen, there's hardly a restaurant you can go to, especially Chinese. Chinese is noted for MSG in the food. It's one of the reasons people have headaches when they get through eating Chinese. It's the MSG. but it's used to flavor almost everything, hamburgers, steaks, you name it, it's there. Well, here's some of the other names that this silent killer is lurking as. Aspartame broth, casein or caseinate, glutamate, hydrolyzed or autolyzed yeast, and hydrolyzed protein. Well, you can learn more about what foods contain MSG if you log on to CBN.com. And tomorrow, in part 2 of our series on MSG, we'll look at how it affects your brain and nervous system. You know, it's a hidden killer.
It's hidden, and when I was watching that story and reading about it, I literally wanted to get a list and print out the list so that I could check my cupboards and check my kitchen, because not just for me, but for my son. I want to make sure that I'm not giving him something that I don't know I'm giving.
Baby food, soup.
Yeah.
Almost every kind of soup has this kind of stuff in it, and you go down the line because it makes food taste good, and it kills you while it's making taste good. All right. What we're going to show you is shocking. And Christy, I would ask you if you, I don't know if you got your glasses. I have.
I can see.
I have Nor's. It says cream of spinach soup in a. Well, an interesting mix. I don't quite know what it's a recipe mix.
Yeah.
You mix it in with various things, and it sounds so delicious. Would you read what is down there?
Some of the ingredients?
Yeah.
All right, wheat flour.
Yeah,
all right, hydrogenated soybean oil.
Hydrogenated, all right.
Maltodextrin,
right.
Chicken fat, monosodium glutamine.
You stop right there. What is that? Monosodium
glutamine. Glutamine?
Glutamate. MSG.
Oh.
That's what that is. Now, that's one type of soup. Here's another type of soup. Tomato and basil. It just sounds wonderful. You can mix chickens and stuff with it. And if you look at the label, it also has...
Monosodium?
You guessed it.
I'll just say MSG. I can't say the whole monosoda. What is it?
Monosodium glutamate, MSG.
This one really gets me because I don't have any of these in my cabinet, but I do have that.
Well, this is reduced sodium. It says, you know, the sodium in soup, one serving is about 870 milligrams.
Yeah.
But would you kindly read that one?
I'm scared.
That is Campbell's.
All right. Well, okay, we have salt. It's funny because it's all reduced salt. Yeast extract, sodium chloride, monosodium glutamate.
Campbell's, you give this to your kids. They advertise it for children. It's got MSG in it.
Well, you know what gets me, Pat, is when I think of MSG, I instantly think of Chinese food. So if I stay away from Chinese food, then I'm safe from MSG.
Well, I'll show you what it looks in its purest form. This has been sold since about 1909. Ajinomoto, whatever, it's Japanese.
What is it?
It's get a close up. It's monosodium glutamate, and it says what you're supposed to do with it, where you're supposed to use it. You see, all those things you're supposed to.
Well, it's in Chinese. I can't read it.
What's the matter with you? I'm sorry, I thought you were a Chinese man. No, I'm kidding. But it's for soups, it's for chicken, it's for various sauces, and many restaurants put this stuff in. Now, when you were pregnant with your child,
yes,
did you eat a lot of this soup?
Well, I can't say yes or no because I don't remember, but I'm thinking I did have. I don't remember, which is maybe I did have the soup. But I'm serious. You know, this is really, really scary, and we do not understand the impact of MSG.
From birth, child in the womb, if the mother, pregnant mother, has a lot of MSG food, eats Chinese and eats this other stuff, that child will have permanent impairment of the brain, according to some of these studies, and will grow up like 10 years old stupid, not to mention fat. Well, the federal government is supposed to warn us about potentially dangerous food additives, but monosodium glutamate doesn't come with a warning label, even though it could lead to migraines, memory loss, Alzheimer's, and what I was talking about, birth defects, ADD, etc. In part 2 of our series on MSG, Galen Tethero looks at how this flavor booster could be damaging your brain.
Your diet could be your brain's biggest enemy. Why? Consider this. Could the yogurt Granny eats send her prematurely into Alzheimer's? Could your baby's diet be putting the child on a path toward attention deficit disorder? Or could your daily soup slam you with migraines? Dr. Russell Blaylock says all those outcomes are possible because of the flavor enhancer known as MSG. All of those afflictions happen to lab animals that consume monosodium glutamate, and humans are much more sensitive, especially when consuming it over a lifetime.
Instead of just giving a few doses early in life, we give it throughout the entire life of the animal. When we do that, we see dramatic damage to that animal's brain. Not just to the obesity centers, but to centers that control memory, learning, social interaction, social control.
And pain. Terry Strauss was about 10 when the headaches began.
I started having severe migraine headaches. The pain was just unbearable. There were many, many days I would come home from school, nauseous, sick. I would go straight to bed and just stay there until the next morning.
That trauma continued through his teen years, with doctors suggesting he'd grow out of it. He didn't. Eventually, they put him on a drug. He could work, but it was far from a normal life. Things began to change when he saw a news program on MSG causing migraines. He began avoiding anything he knew might contain MSG.
I noticed within a month that the headaches had subsided, that they were not there. They were not as severe when I did get them later. And my wife was amazed. She said, "You were right." She said, "We need to continue this."
Headache specialist Dr. David Buchholz is certain MSG causes migraines for literally millions of people.
That's exactly right. It's an excitotoxin, and it turns on this headache mechanism and makes you hurt like heck.
An excitotoxin is any substance that overexcites cells to the point of damage, acting as a toxin. And there may be more to this public poison. MSG can directly worsen autism, attention deficit disorder, and hyperactivity. MSG can cause the brain to be miswired, especially in the womb in the first few years of life. That damage to brain connections can mess up nearly any aspect of brain function, from the control of hormones to behavior and intelligence. That's what happens with infant mice. After being fed MSG, they show no signs of mental damage until they're older and begin to fail at complex tasks. Bluntly put, they become stupid. And humans are 5 times more sensitive to MSG than mice. Infants even more so. Blaylock believes the entire education system suffers as a result, even the ability of students to get along with each other. But what about MSG's impact on brain afflictions in older adults? Blaylock says MSG may only be a contributing factor in starting brain diseases, but it definitely can make major neurological afflictions worse. Alzheimer's disease, ALS, sometimes called Lou Gehrig's disease, multiple sclerosis, strokes, Parkinson's disease. They all involve excitotoxins doing harm. Blaylock has written the only book on excitotoxins for the general public. He's updated that information in a book on health and nutrition secrets. He says the key is staying away from MSG. But that's not as easy as it sounds.
It's in all sorts of commercially processed food products that wouldn't taste like much if they didn't have this flavor enhancer added to them. And it's not always labeled as MSG or monosodium glutamate. It's labeled as hydrolyzed protein or natural flavors, and you'd never suspect it.
But Strauss does suspect it. He and his wife have learned the names that hide MSG.
Learning how to do the grocery shopping, reading labels, knowing what types of food to choose, what types of food not to choose.
Of course, any ingredient with the word glutamate, plus aspartame, autolyzed yeast, broth, caseinate, hydrolyzed proteins such as hydrolyzed soy. And for the public, Blaylock says there's a simple truth. Avoiding MSG could be the best thing you'll ever do for your brain. And he adds, don't be surprised when medical organizations and government agencies defend MSG as safe. He says they simply don't understand the complex vulnerability of the brain. Galen Tethrow, CBN News.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're not here to scare you, but we sure are here to warn you, and Galen is here with us. Galen, this is an absolute horrible, frightening report.
It is, and it's much worse than we originally thought. You know, years ago we discussed these topics, but the research is showing more and more problems, more and more areas of the body, and so everyone is vulnerable in a sense.
Does MSG trigger an appetite response where people want to eat more food if it's flavored with MSG?
Yeah, it does. There's basically a drug effect on the tongue, not a true flavor in a sense, and so they do want to eat more. And that's partly because of the direct taste effect. It's also partly what it does to the brain.
Does the MSG make people fat directly, or is it because it triggers more desire to eat food?
Well, it's really a secondary effect. It's partly the food and partly that the hormones are messed up in the body, including leptin, which is, there's been a lot of discussion about that.
Well, Galen, if a nursing mother, not the nursing mother, but a pregnant woman, you think camels, chicken, and herbs. I mean, how safe and how wonderful could it be if you're pregnant to eat something like this?
It sounds just delightful on the surface, but that baby, who's very tiny, is getting a larger dose than the mother is getting. And
what that research that Dr. Blaylock was saying is that it starts out you don't notice it, but when the child gets to 8, 9, 10 years old, that its brain isn't functioning, it's stupid.
That's right. You don't notice these things because the child isn't faced with complex tasks. When they start speaking, when they start going to school, sometimes it's that late before you notice they can't do these complex tasks as well, or sometimes at all.
But the ADD, which is so prevalent today, they hit the kids with Ritalin, and that's supposed to be the answer. But is ADD caused by this, you think?
It's part of the cause.
Yeah.
Because it can cause miswiring of the brain from early on, from the womb, in early age, and beyond.
So I held this up, and we had a little hard time with the Japanese. Ajinomoto. Ajinomoto. And monosodium glutamate. And is that what does that mean, Ajinomoto?
The essence of taste. That's the Japanese name for MSG, and that's the name of the company. But this is made right here in the United States.
So they put this in everything, essentially.
Well, different forms of it. See, that's the tricky part.
Right.
Sometimes it's added directly as this, and then it's labeled. You see monosodium glutamate. But it's portions of autolyzed yeast extract and hydrolyzed protein and broth. It sounds all okay.
Broth?
Broth can. It's not always. See, because the government hasn't required proper labeling. We don't even know. So are you going to take something that may harm you, or are you going to say, well, I'm going to avoid that product? You probably are going to.
I mean, you have got to be a food detective to figure. Well, hydrolyzed protein sounds pretty benign.
It does. We're all supposed to get protein, right? We're supposed to maybe lower our carbs and increase protein, but unfortunately, a lot of the proteins in all kinds of things, energy bars, etc., are broken down proteins, releasing this glutamate and related substances.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we've been talking about NutraSweet and what a devastating effect that has on memory and on brain function. That's another excitotoxin. But this thing is serious. I know it's a pain in the neck to look at the fine print on a box of Knorr's tomato and basil soup that you add water to, and you think, well, isn't this going to be wonderful? And yes.
People shouldn't be discouraged, because the fact is, when I learned about this stuff, we went through the grocery, and sometimes there was two products, same thing, next to each other. One did and one didn't. So you just kind of develop your system. Once you have a system, you can go through your grocery pretty safely.
Well, I got all these things out of my own kitchen cabinet that my sweet wife had brought home. And I think these are all destined for the garbage can. But, ladies and gentlemen, if enough consumers begin to object to this, then the manufacturers will find some other way of making their food taste good. We've got two more of these pieces coming up.
Yes, we sure do. We're going to talk about heart disease, sudden death heart attack included, and cancer. This stuff acts like fertilizer for cancer. And our final story then is about how do you navigate all this.
Well, things that go bump in the night. Ladies and gentlemen, we've got more information on MSG. You can get it by going to our website, CBN.com. Well, this is a series about something that appears in food all over our society. It's in grocery stores, it's in restaurants, almost everywhere you eat. It's called monosodium glutamate, or MSG. One of the most common food additives in America. In fact, it's so common that most people don't even know they're eating it. But this flavor booster is now being linked to cancer and heart disease. Here's medical reporter Galen Tethrow with part 3 of our series on MSG.
Monosodium glutamate is adding flavor to your food, but many researchers believe it's also subtracting years from your life. Jack Samuels wonders how he's dodged the MSG bullet for 35 years.
I began to collapse towards the end of certain meals in restaurants. And frankly, I thought I was dying.
And he could have. A physician diagnosed him with atrial fibrillation.
That is, my heart becomes like jello and just beats all over the place. And it sometimes takes me up to 5 to 6 days to get over the attack.
But how could MSG be responsible? Dr. Russell Blaylock says it's because glutamate gets into the blood quickly and stays there. So a person eating MSG throughout the day can raise glutamate blood levels dangerously high.
With each meal, it rises, it stays elevated till you eat another meal, then it rises even further, and you eat another meal and it rises even further, and then it stays elevated through a good portion of the night.
Blaylock says even moderate blood levels of MSG can cause harm, partly because specific organs have actual biological triggers called glutamate receptors. A group of these receptors in the heart controls heart rhythm.
You can induce a fatal arrhythmia. That is, the heart beats abnormally and people can die from it. Well, arrhythmia is the #1 cause of death with heart attack. It's been noted in the medical literature for decades that people who die of sudden cardiac death frequently do so after a meal.
And Samuels, a retired hospital administrator, says ER doctors
immediately recognize that it may be an MSG reaction. Sadly, that knowledge has not gone up beyond the first floor.
In other words, most cardiologists don't know about the connection to MSG. 2006 animal research shows that MSG damages blood vessels with substances known as free radicals that can lead to clogged, weak arteries and blood clots.
With humans consuming it every day, not just a single injection, but every day, they're constantly increasing the free radical generation inside the walls of their blood vessels.
That's how most heart attacks and strokes come about. Research shows MSG attacks over 40% of the population in some obvious way: migraines, throat swelling, diarrhea, vomiting, irregular heartbeats. But what about the less obvious, even silent damage? Glutamate receptors on the lungs could explain the rising affliction of juvenile asthma.
This is one of the things agreed by everybody, is that it will produce worsening of asthma, even fatal asthma.
And don't forget the nasty plague of diabetes affecting tens of millions of Americans. There are glutamate receptors on the pancreas, which can lead to diabetes or loss of diabetic control once the disease is present. Blaylock has also studied cancer extensively and written a book for cancer patients. In the last 5 years, researchers have found many cancers have glutamate receptors.
The total picture is that if you're consuming a diet with glutamate in it, particularly high levels, you're making your cancer grow very rapidly. I refer to it as cancer fertilizer.
The cancers of this type include several brain cancers, colon cancer, breast cancer, and others as well. For Samuels and others who are concerned about avoiding MSG's impact on health, there is hope. As hard as navigating the grocery to avoid hidden MSG is, safe shopping is doable if you read food labels carefully. Galen Tethrow, CBN News.
Well, if that doesn't scare you, I don't know what will. Isn't that horrible?
It's exhausting, Pat, because as I'm watching this story, my brain is just spinning, thinking, what's in my cabinet?
Well, what's healthy? You want to have a nice, healthy salad, right?
Yeah.
I mean, salads are good. So you want to get Hidden Valley Ranch Light Buttermilk.
I just bought that.
Would you mind reading the label, madam?
All right.
What is it? Just read a few of those things.
All right. Artificial flavors, something gum, and then it says monosodium glutamate.
That's MSG. That's in your salad. And here is something.
I just bought that.
Well, you better throw it away.
Well.
Here's something. Ken's Steakhouse Light Asian Sesame with ginger and soy. Doesn't that sound delicious? 60% less fat, 40% fewer calories. And what does Ken put in his Asian sesame sauce?
Monosodium glutamate.
The same. You don't know how much
and
it
I've
is?
got that one in my fridge, too.
You just...
Well, because I'm thinking that I'm eating very healthy when I eat my salad, so I have an array of salad dressings.
Well, here's one. It sounds nice. Gerard's Light Caesar Dressing, 50% less fat. Doesn't that sound good?
It sounds luscious.
All right. Tell me what it's got in that.
I'm assuming, monosodium glutamate, MSG.
It's got everything.
And more MSG.
And here's another one. Marzetti. This is the one I've never heard of. It's ranch creamy with buttermilk, but it has monosodium. You know, I understand that there are a few, but if you would like the Lone Ranger to come to the rescue, ta-da!
Olive oil. I can't stand the taste of olive oil on my food, though.
You'd better start developing a taste. Put this in with it.
What is that?
Well, that's
What is that, vinegar?
Yeah.
So vinegar and olive oil?
That's it. It's good for you.
It's good for you, but
it's in my salad in my diet program.
You know what's even better?
What's that?
A little squeeze of lemon. Put some lemon on a salad and call it a day.
Yeah, but the olive oil is so good for you. This is a very,
It's very pure.
Yeah. Extra virgin. Well, doesn't that sound good? Okay. That's the good stuff. All this and practically everyone that you see. Now, I understand Paul Newman. Mm-hmm. Paul Newman has done so much. He gives them away. He's got about a $60 million business, and he gives all the profit away to charity.
Does he really?
Yeah, Newman's Own. And
wow.
I'm told they don't put MSG in that, so we tip our hat to this outstanding actor. And he's helping not only charity, but he's helping the American people by. So if you can find Newman's Own, use it on your salads. But if you really want to make yourself healthy, take about 2 tablespoons of olive oil and a little balsamic vinegar. That'll make you better. Well, on tomorrow's 700 Club, we'll show you how to shop for foods that don't contain MSG. Well, you've been shocked at our exclusive report on an excitotoxin called monosodium glutamate, or MSG. It's an additive that makes food taste better. But you may not realize what it's doing to your body. It can lead to obesity, heart and brain damage, cancer, and damage, of course, to unborn children, to the fetuses. MSG is everywhere. So how can you avoid it at your grocery store or restaurant? Here's medical reporter Galen Tetherow with the final part of this very important series.
Keeping monosodium glutamate off the table is no easy task. Your waiter or chef rarely knows anything about hidden MSG or what ingredients have it. In the grocery, there are dozens of hidden names for MSG.
The consumer needs to tell these manufacturers, we're not going to buy your product until that's taken out, and don't disguise names because we'll find out what they are.
And Dr. Russell Blaylock says science is finding more and more problems that may be caused by MSG, even infertility.
Because the male sperm cannot get to the egg, and it decreases the number of sperm. And the female, we know the ovary is filled with glutamate receptors.
MSG stimulates those receptors so that a woman's eggs become damaged. And with basic life issues like that, is the Food and Drug Administration sounding any alarms?
The FDA has never walked into a flavoring house or into a food producer and stated, give me that flavoring, I want to test it for free glutamic acid. So it's never been tested.
Jack Samuels learned MSG caused his heart spasms years ago.
On 2 occasions, they thought I had died because they could not get a pulse.
And for his own safety, he only shops at a natural food store called Jimbo's with a specific strategy. Here are some of his secrets. Pick organic vegetables without cosmetic wax.
They wax them to look better and to fill in the crannies that are normal to growth.
And that could be a glutamate type?
They sometimes put a hydrolyzed protein into that mixture.
Buy milk which is pasteurized but not homogenized, but not this one that's ultra-pasteurized.
It brings the milk to a higher level of heat, and in so doing breaks down some of the protein, and so an individual like myself will get sick.
Terry Strauss blames MSG for the migraines he suffered for almost 15 years. He looks for those secret names at a regular grocery.
We stay away from bologna and hot dogs and all of the cheaper processed meats. This is all really safe for our family. The ranch, it might be fat-free, but it has MSG right in the ingredient list. There's a long list of ingredients, and certainly some things that could mask MSG, but in a small enough content that it doesn't trigger any kind of a reaction in our family.
So there are definite ways to keep healthy while grocery shopping. And our careful consumers say groceries shouldn't worry about losing business. Strauss says his family actually spends a little more, yet eats much healthier. So everybody wins. But what about those restaurants? Some chains like Pizza Hut list their ingredients online. Pizza Hut even has 5 food items they actually warn as having MSG, such as their wings and salad dressings. Pizza Hut is not alone. All of the major chains we investigated had items with disguised MSG. When deciding what to order, be aware that salad dressings, sauces, breaded meats, and meat toppings are common offenders. Classier restaurants are generally safer because they often cook from scratch and add real spices instead of manufactured flavor enhancers. But to be sure, you may have to talk to the chef to find out what he or she uses. So what should you do in general? Blaylock says go for the fruits and vegetables. He has a DVD on nutrition so families will know the good things that counteract MSG's effects. He also warns about aspartame, the diet sweetener, which is a related compound. Blaylock especially recommends dark green vegetables because they are high in antioxidants to diffuse MSG. They're also high in magnesium, which can actually block MSG from those glutamate receptors.
Name something that it doesn't affect, because these receptors in the spleen, they're in the liver, they're in the heart, they're in the GI tract, they're in the immune system, they're in the brain, they're in the peripheral nerve, in the vagus nerves, in the heart, and all the arteries.
For centuries, the Japanese have used a little seaweed as a flavor enhancer. It had a little glutamate, but it didn't seem to cause any problems. Then about 100 years ago, they started manufacturing it, laying the foundation for today's problems. Massive use of MSG, improper labeling, and a federal agency that refuses to have it labeled so consumers can make intelligent decisions. Reporting from San Diego, I'm Galen Tethrow, CBN News.
Thanks, Galen. If you missed any of our stories on MSG, you can see them by going to our website, cbn.com. You can also download that. You can send some of it to your friends. It's shocking, Terry.
It's everywhere.
It's everywhere.
It's really astonishing.
But the damage it's doing, it's you know, just to think if you're a pregnant woman and you're eating a diet high in MSG, like you want to eat Chinese and so forth, your baby is going to be tending toward being fat, but it also will not be able to do complex thinking when it gets to be 8, 9, 10 years old.
Well, the really frustrating part for the consumer, I think, is that it's couched in other terms. If it just said MSG, you'd be able to easily know whether it's in there or not.
But, you know, I mean, Campbell's soup, I mean, that's like mother and apple pie. I mean, how American can it get? You know, Campbell's chunky.
It's good without the MSG.
Yeah, but every one of them now has got MSG. You read the labels, and it's just shocking. And Hidden Valley Ranch, it sounds so like Roy Rogers. You know, but big MSG in it. They're poisoning you with those sweet names.
There's a double threat out there that may help explain poor school performance, criminal behavior, alcoholism, and the growing numbers of Alzheimer's patients. The possible culprits? Food additives and junky diets. Dr. Russell Blaylock says it's a double whammy because of high sugar content and starchy carbohydrates that act like sugar in the body. Blaylock, a medical expert on the brain, explains that problem in a new DVD lecture, Nutrition and Behavior.
Now, why would sugar have such a profound influence on brain function and psychological function? Well, when the sugar is in excess, it produces excess release of insulin. When insulin is released, you get hypoglycemia if it's excessive. That is, the blood sugar falls.
This low blood sugar, or hypoglycemia, affects up to 20% of U.S. adults and can cause varying behavior. Hyperactivity is often the response in younger children. For many children and adults, there can be violent and aggressive behavior. Mental confusion can be the result for older people as the low blood sugar fails to fuel the brain, making it more prone to Alzheimer's. Jack Samuels recalls that kind of confusion during a trip to grab milk at the grocery.
I remember, getting way out into the countryside and pulling to the side of the road and trying to sort of calm myself and think, now where did I come from?
You see, Samuels had accidentally consumed some of the flavor-enhancing food additive known as monosodium glutamate. MSG can cause hypoglycemia on its own. Samuels tries to avoid all forms of MSG, but struggles because there are so many hidden sources. MSG can hide on food labels under deceptive names like hydrolyzed corn, autolyzed yeast, broth, and even natural flavors. Another danger is alcohol, because it acts just like sugar.
And the reason the alcoholic continues to drink alcohol is because the alcohol is a source of tremendous energy. And so when their blood sugar falls, they drink the alcohol, they feel better, and their blood sugar falls again, they drink more alcohol, and it's just an unending cycle.
A study found 97% of alcoholics to be hypoglycemic. Another study showed that when their hypoglycemia is treated with nutrition, 70% of them become sober. Under other methods, 25% or less enter recovery. The diet soda sweetener aspartame contains alcohol. That fact and the way it stimulates the release of excessive insulin help explain why it causes hypoglycemia.
And so you tend to eat and snack and nibble, and you gain weight. Monosodium glutamate will do the same thing. Now, the food manufacturers know this. That's why they put so much MSG in food.
And then there's plain sugar and its effects on children. One study gave kids sugar equal to the amount in one soda. Overall, their test scores went down. Just 1 hour after taking the sugar, they made twice as many mistakes. The sugar-loaded students also showed more inappropriate behavior during free play. So what diet is anti-hypoglycemic? That would be lean meat and lots of fresh fruits and vegetables. Another key, watch those sugars and starches like sugar itself, products with corn syrup, most fruit juices, white bread, white rice, and white potatoes. By avoiding most processed food, you'll also be more likely to steer clear of the MSG that so often lurks among the ingredients. And with so much of this information out there, you might wonder if the government is looking into the connection between nutrition and behavior.
There is very little financial reward for a researcher to find the cause of a disease, and consequently most of the research dollars go to the development of drugs to treat a disease because there's a lot of money involved there.
Blaylock says think of the kids and start teaching them about nutrition. That could make for a better home life today and future adults better able to excel in the world. Galen Tethrow, CBN News.
We're developing a society because of all of these different toxins known to affect brain function. We're seeing a society that not only has a lot more people of lower IQ, but a lot fewer people of higher IQ. In other words, a dumbing down, a chemical dumbing down of society. So everyone's sort of mediocre. That leaves them dependent on government because they can't excel. We have these people of lower IQ who are totally dependent. Then we have this mass of people who are going to believe anything they're told because they can't really think clearly. And very few people of very high IQ who have good cognitive function who can figure this all out. And that's what they want. So, you can kind of piece it together as to why they are so insistent in spending so many hundreds of millions of dollars of propaganda money to dumb down society.